He brought the injured Apache woman home, then learned it was an old Apache marriage rite. Daniel had been on the road for many hours. His job often took him through long, empty highways where the land seemed to stretch forever. On this particular evening, the sky was slowly turning orange and purple as the sun began to sink behind the distant hills. The desert air felt quiet and heavy, and the only sound was the low hum of his truck moving over the road. He was tired, but he wanted to reach his small home before it got too dark. Living alone in a remote area had its peaceful moments, but it also meant long drives and very little company. Daniel had grown used to the silence. Sometimes he liked it. Other times it made him feel lonely in a way he could not fully explain. As he drove, he noticed how empty the road was. No other cars passed him for miles. The land on both sides looked dry and rough, with small bushes and rocks scattered everywhere. It was the kind of place where help could be far away if something went wrong. Daniel always kept that in mind when he traveled through these areas. Just as he was thinking about stopping for a short break, something caught his eye near the side of the road. At first he thought it might be an animal or a piece of trash blown by the wind, but as he got closer, he saw that it was a person. A woman was sitting on the ground near a small dirt path that led away from the highway. Daniel slowed down and looked more carefully. The woman looked tired and dusty. Her clothes were dirty and her hair looked messy, as if she had been outside for a long time. She was holding her leg and leaning slightly to one side. From a distance, it looked like she might be hurt. Daniel felt a sudden sense of concern. He knew how dangerous it could be for someone to be stranded in such a lonely place, especially as night was coming. He thought about driving past. Some people warned against stopping for strangers, but something in his heart told him that this was not a situation he could ignore. He pulled his truck over to the side of the road and turned off the engine. The desert became even quieter without the sound of the motor. For a moment, he just sat there, looking at the woman, wondering if he was doing the right thing. Then he took a deep breath and stepped out of the truck. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked gently as he walked closer. He did not want to scare her. He kept his hands visible and his voice calm. The woman looked up slowly. Her eyes showed fear, tiredness, and something else that Daniel could not clearly read. She said something softly, but he could not understand her. It sounded like she was speaking a different language, or very broken English. Daniel noticed that she was shaking slightly, either from pain, cold, or stress. He pointed to her leg and asked, "Is your leg hurt?" She nodded slowly. She tried to stand, but it was clear that it was difficult for her. She winced and quickly sat back down. That was enough for Daniel to decide that she truly needed help. He went back to his truck and grabbed a bottle of water and a small first aid kit he kept for emergencies. When he returned, he offered her the water. She took it with shaking hands and drank slowly, as if she had not had much water in a long time. Daniel tried to ask her where she was going and how she ended up there, but communication was hard. She pointed in a general direction and spoke a few words he did not understand. It seemed like she was trying to explain, but the language barrier made everything unclear. Still, one thing was obvious to Daniel. Leaving her there was not safe. The sun was almost gone, and the desert could become cold and dangerous at night. Even if help came, it might not be soon. Daniel felt a strong sense of responsibility growing inside him. He thought about calling emergency services, but his phone signal was weak. He tried anyway, but the call would not go through. The nearest town was far, and the idea of leaving her alone while he drove to get help did not sit well with him. Daniel looked at the woman, and then at the empty road. He felt torn. He did not want to make a wrong choice, but he also did not want to walk away from someone who clearly needed help. Finally, he made a decision. He pointed to his truck and said slowly, "I can take you with me. My home is not too close, but you will be safe there. Then I can find better help for you." The woman looked at him with unsure eyes. For a moment Daniel worried that she might refuse, but then she nodded slowly. She tried to stand again. This time Daniel carefully offered his arm. She leaned on him, and together they slowly walked to the truck. He helped her sit in the passenger seat and made sure she was comfortable. He gave her another small blanket he kept in the truck. She wrapped it around herself and sat quietly, looking out the window. As Daniel started the engine and pulled back onto the road, his mind was full of thoughts. He wondered who she was, where she came from, and how she ended up alone in such a place. He also wondered if bringing her to his home was the right thing to do. But deep down he knew that doing nothing would have felt worse. He had always believed that helping others when you truly could was important. Even if it brought trouble or confusion, he felt that kindness was better than fear. The drive to his home felt longer than usual. The sky grew darker and stars began to appear. The woman remained quiet, holding her leg and looking tired. Every now and then, Daniel glanced at her to make sure she was okay. When they finally reached his small house, the lights were off, and the place looked just as it always did, simple, quiet, and a little lonely. Daniel parked the truck and helped the woman inside. He gave her a place to sit, brought her more water, and tried to make her as comfortable as possible. He knew he was not a doctor, but he did what he could with what he had. He cleaned a small cut on her leg and wrapped it carefully. She watched him with a calm, serious expression. As the night went on, Daniel felt a strange mix of worry and hope. He worried about her injury and about what might happen next. But he also felt a quiet sense of purpose. For the first time in a long while, his empty house did not feel so empty. He did not know it yet, but this simple act of stopping on a lonely road and bringing a stranger into his home was the beginning of something much bigger than he could ever imagine. At that moment, all he knew was that he had tried to do the right thing, and sometimes life changes because of one small, kind decision made on a quiet road at sunset. The next morning, Daniel woke up earlier than usual. For a few seconds, he forgot that he was not alone in the house. Then he remembered the woman he had brought home the night before. The memory came back quickly, and he sat up in bed, feeling both concerned and curious about how she was doing. He walked quietly down the hallway toward the small guest area where he had set up a place for her to rest. The house was still quiet, filled only with the soft sounds of the early morning. When he looked in, he saw that she was already awake, sitting up slowly and holding a cup of water. She looked tired but calmer than before. Daniel greeted her gently and asked how she was feeling. She smiled weakly and said a few simple words in English, letting him know that she was a little better. Her leg still hurt, but she said the pain was not as bad as the night before. Daniel felt some relief hearing that. He went into the kitchen and made a simple breakfast. He cooked eggs, warmed some bread, and made tea. He brought the food to her and placed it on a small table near her. At first, she seemed unsure if she should eat. Then she looked at him, nodded, and quietly thanked him. She ate slowly, as if she was not used to having much food. As they sat in the same room, Daniel tried to start a small conversation. He asked her name again, and this time, she said it more clearly. It was a traditional name that Daniel had trouble repeating. He tried, but his pronunciation was not good. She smiled gently at his effort. To make things easier, Daniel asked if he could call her by a shorter name. After a short pause, She nodded. That was how he began calling her Maya. Throughout the day, Daniel noticed something that surprised him. Even though she was supposed to be resting, Maya kept trying to help. When Daniel went to wash dishes, she slowly stood up and tried to dry them. When he tried to stop her, she looked embarrassed, as if she felt uncomfortable just sitting and doing nothing. Daniel told her to rest, but she gently insisted on helping in small ways. She folded a blanket. She wiped the table. She picked up small things around the house. It was clear that she felt a strong need to be useful. Daniel did not fully understand why, but he could see that it mattered to her. As the hours passed, Daniel started to notice how natural she seemed in his home. She moved carefully but confidently, as if she already knew where things belonged. She treated the space with respect, touching things gently and keeping everything neat. It felt less like having a guest and more like sharing the house with someone who felt connected to it. Daniel also noticed the way she looked at him. It was not fear or distrust. It was something closer to respect and quiet attention. When he spoke, she listened closely. When he helped her, she lowered her eyes slightly, a gesture that felt meaningful, even though Daniel did not fully understand it. In the afternoon, Daniel suggested that they try to visit a clinic in town. Maya listened carefully. She looked thoughtful and then shook her head slowly. She said a few words that Daniel understood only partly. It seemed like she was saying that she did not want to go yet. She touched her leg and then her chest, as if to say she needed more time. Daniel was unsure what to do. He wanted to make sure she was safe and healthy, but he also did not want to force her into something she was uncomfortable with. He decided to give her one more day to rest and then talk about it again. Later, Daniel received a phone call from a neighbor who lived a few miles away. The neighbor had heard that Daniel had stopped on the highway the night before. In a small town, news traveled fast. The neighbor asked if everything was okay. Daniel said that he had helped a woman who was injured. The neighbor sounded quiet for a moment and then said something that stayed in Daniel's mind. "Just be careful," the neighbor said. "Out here, not everything is as simple as it looks." Daniel did not know what that meant, but it made him think. After the call, he looked at Maya, who was sitting quietly by the window, watching the land outside. She looked peaceful, but also serious, as if she was thinking about many things at once. That evening, Daniel cooked dinner. He made a simple meal, and they ate together at the small table. Maya watched how he prepared the food, and then quietly offered to help. Even with her sore leg, she stood nearby and showed him a different way to cut vegetables. She seemed to enjoy being part of the process. After dinner, she carefully washed the dishes, even though Daniel told her she did not have to. She moved slowly, but she did not complain. Daniel started to realize that helping was not just something she did. It was something that seemed deeply important to her. As the night grew quiet, they sat in the living room. Daniel turned on a small lamp. The soft light filled the room. Maya looked around at the pictures on the wall. There were old family photos and a few pictures from Daniel's younger days. She pointed to one and asked a simple question about it. Daniel explained as best as he could. He told her about his past, about how he had once lived in a bigger city and how life had slowly brought him to this quiet place. He talked about work, about losing touch with many people, and about how the silence sometimes felt heavy. Maya listened closely. She did not interrupt. When he finished, she said a few words that were simple but kind. She told him that he was a good man. The words were not fancy, but they felt honest. Daniel felt something warm in his chest when she said that. Before going to sleep, Daniel prepared a more comfortable place for her to rest. He added extra blankets and made sure she had everything she needed. She thanked him quietly and looked at him with eyes that showed deep gratitude. As Daniel lay in his own bed that night, he could not stop thinking about how quickly his quiet life had changed. Just one day earlier, his house had been empty and silent. Now, there was another presence in it. The air felt different, not in a bad way, but in a way that made him more aware, more awake to life. He also felt a small sense of worry. He still did not know much about Maya. He did not know her full story, where she came from, or what had really happened to her. But he could tell that there was more to her situation than she was saying. Still, Daniel chose to trust his instincts. He believed that helping her was the right thing to do. He did not know that his kindness was slowly being seen through a very different cultural meaning. For now, all he knew was that a stranger had become someone who felt strangely close, and his once lonely home now held a quiet connection that was growing stronger with each passing hour. Over the next few days, life in Daniel's house began to settle into a new kind of routine. It was not something he had planned, but it happened naturally. Each morning, Daniel would wake up and listen for small sounds in the house, something he was not used to before. Sometimes it was the soft sound of footsteps. Sometimes it was the quiet movement of dishes. These small sounds made the house feel more alive. Maya's legs slowly started to improve. She could walk a little better each day, though she still moved carefully. Daniel suggested again that they visit a clinic in town, but Maya always hesitated. She would listen, look thoughtful, and then gently change the subject. Daniel did not push too hard, but deep inside, he wondered why she seemed so uncomfortable with the idea. One afternoon, as Daniel was working outside, he noticed a dusty vehicle slow down near his property. He watched as it stopped at the edge of his land. A man and a woman stepped out. They were older and dressed in a traditional style that Daniel had seen before in nearby communities. They looked around carefully, as if making sure they were in the right place. Maya, who had been sitting inside, suddenly became very alert when she saw them. Her posture changed. She stood up straighter, even though her legs still hurt. Her face showed a mix of nervousness and respect. Without saying much, she slowly walked outside to meet them. Daniel stayed nearby but gave them some space. He could hear them speaking in their own language. Their voices were calm but serious. The older woman gently touched Maya's shoulder. The older man looked around Daniel's property, then at Daniel himself, studying him quietly. Daniel felt uncomfortable but also curious. He wanted to know what was being said, but he also did not want to interrupt. He could sense that this moment was important to Maya. After a few minutes, the visitors nodded to her and then looked at Daniel. They did not say much in English, only simple greetings. Then they returned to their vehicle and drove away slowly. After they left, Maya stood very still for a moment. Then she sat down carefully, as if the visit had taken a lot of energy from her. Daniel walked over and asked if she was okay. She nodded, but her eyes looked emotional. "They are my people," she said softly. Daniel asked if they were checking on her. She nodded again.
"Yes, they wanted to see if I am safe."
Daniel felt relieved to hear that. At least she was not completely alone in the world. But at the same time, he felt a strange feeling in his chest. The way they had looked at him, the way they had looked at the house, made him feel like they were not just checking on her. It felt like they were also judging the situation in a deeper way. That evening, Maya brought out a small bundle of items that the visitors had left with her. Inside were pieces of traditional jewelry and simple clothing. She handled them carefully, with respect. She began wearing some of them over the next few days. The jewelry was simple but meaningful. Daniel could tell that each piece had a story behind it. As she wore these items, Daniel noticed that her behavior became slightly different. She became more quiet and thoughtful. She spent more time sitting by the window or outside looking at the land. Sometimes she seemed peaceful. Other times she looked like she was carrying a heavy thought in her heart. Daniel also started to notice changes in how people in the nearby town treated him. When he went to buy supplies, a few people asked questions in a careful way. "I heard you have someone staying with you," one person said. Daniel nodded and explained that he was helping an injured woman. Some people nodded in understanding. Others gave him looks that were harder to read. A few offered gentle advice, telling him to be respectful of local traditions and to be patient. One older man in the town store said something that stayed with Daniel. "Sometimes kindness is seen in ways you may not expect," the man said.
"Just be sure you understand what's happening around you."
Daniel thanked him, but the words made him uneasy. On the drive home, he kept thinking about them.
He did not feel like he was doing anything wrong, but he could tell that something bigger might be happening beneath the surface. That night, Daniel sat with Maya in the living room. The lamp cast soft shadows on the walls. The house felt quiet and serious. Daniel decided to gently ask her more about her people and her traditions. He did not want to sound rude, so he chose his words carefully. Maya listened and then spoke slowly. She explained a little about her community, about how elders were respected and how family and tradition were very important. She said that some customs were old, passed down through many generations. She did not explain everything, but Daniel could tell that these traditions were deeply meaningful to her. "Do they know you are here?" Daniel asked. "Yes," she said quietly.
They know. And they are okay with it?
Maya paused for a long moment. Then she said, "They are watching. They want to see what kind of man you are." Those words surprised Daniel. "What kind of man I am?" he repeated. Maya nodded.
They watch how you treat me, how you care.
How you speak. These things matter. Daniel felt a strange mix of pride and pressure. He had only been trying to help, but now it sounded like his actions were being measured in a way he did not fully understand. Over the next few days, Daniel became more aware of his own behavior. He made sure to be extra respectful. He spoke gently. He asked before doing anything that might affect Maya. He did not realize it, but he was slowly stepping into a role that felt more serious than that of just a helper. Maya, in turn, seemed to show him more trust. She shared small stories from her past. She talked about growing up, about learning from elders, and about the importance of loyalty and responsibility. Her words were simple, but the meaning behind them felt deep. One evening, Daniel noticed something else. A vehicle passed by his property slowly and did not stop. Later, another did the same. Daniel realized that people might be watching, not in a harmful way, but in a careful, respectful way. It made him feel like his quiet home had become part of something larger. Maya noticed his concern. She told him softly not to worry. "They only want to know you are good," she said. Daniel wanted to believe that, but he could not shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of something important. He still did not know the full truth, but he could feel that his simple act of kindness had become part of a deeper story that involved culture, tradition, and expectations he had never planned for. As Daniel lay in bed that night, he stared at the ceiling and thought about how much his life had changed in just a short time. The quiet man who once lived alone was now connected to a world he barely understood. He did not know what the future would bring, but he could sense that answers were coming soon, and they might change how he saw everything that had happened so far. The next few days felt heavier for Daniel. Even though nothing bad had happened, he could feel a change in the air. The house was still calm, but there was a quiet tension that had not been there before. Daniel noticed it in the way Maya sometimes went silent in the middle of a task, as if she was thinking about something serious. He noticed it in the way he himself felt more careful with his words and actions. One afternoon, as the sun was high in the sky, another visitor arrived. This time it was an older man who walked slowly up the dirt path to Daniel's house. He carried himself with quiet confidence. His hair was gray, and his face showed the deep lines of someone who had lived many years and seen many changes. Maya saw him from the window and immediately stood up. Her expression changed. It was clear that this man was important. She adjusted her clothing and took a deep breath, as if preparing herself. Daniel stepped outside to meet the man. The older man greeted him politely and introduced himself as an elder from Maya's community. His voice was calm and respectful. He asked if they could talk privately for a few minutes. Daniel felt nervous but agreed. They sat outside where the breeze moved gently through the dry plants. The elder looked around the land for a moment, then turned his attention fully to Daniel. "I want to thank you for helping Maya," the elder said. "What you did on the road showed kindness and responsibility." Daniel nodded. "I just didn't want to leave her there. Anyone would have done the same." The elder gave a small, knowing smile. "Not everyone would. In our way, actions show more than words." Then the elder slowly began to explain something that Daniel was not prepared to hear. He spoke about old traditions that were still respected in some families. He explained that, in certain situations, a woman might be brought into a man's care in a way that tested his character. If the man accepted her, protected her, and treated her with respect, it could be seen as a serious and meaningful sign. Daniel listened carefully, trying to understand. At first he thought the elder was just talking about general customs. But then the elder's words became more direct. "In some families," the elder said gently, "this kind of situation can be seen as a traditional way of beginning a marriage understanding." Daniel felt like the ground shifted under his feet.
"Marriage?" he repeated, stunned.
The elder nodded slowly. "Not in the modern legal way, but in the traditional sense, it can mean that the man has accepted responsibility for the woman's safety and future. It shows trust, protection, and commitment." Daniel ran a hand over his face. His heart was beating faster. He had never thought of his actions in this way. He had only tried to help someone who looked hurt and alone. The idea that this could be seen as something so serious was overwhelming. "I didn't know," Daniel said honestly. "I never agreed to anything like that. I was just trying to do the right thing." The elder looked at him with understanding. "We know that. This is not meant to trap you or force you. It is an old way, and sometimes it is misunderstood by those outside our culture. But for Maya and her family, it carries meaning." Daniel felt torn. Part of him felt shocked and uncomfortable. Another part of him felt a strange sense of responsibility. He had grown close to Maya. He cared about her well-being, but he had never thought of their situation in such deep terms. "What does Maya think?" Daniel asked quietly. The elder paused. "She believes you are a good man. She believes you would not harm her and that you would treat her with respect." "Ah, that is why she agreed to come into your care in this way." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. The weight of those words pressed on him. He realized that Maya's behavior, her respect, her need to help, her quiet loyalty, all came from something much deeper than simple gratitude. After the elder left, Daniel sat alone for a long time. The desert was quiet, but his mind was loud with thoughts. He felt confused, worried, and thoughtful all at once. He did not feel angry. He could tell that no one had meant to hurt him. But he also felt like he had stepped into a story he did not fully understand. That evening, Daniel and Maya sat together in the living room. The mood was serious. Maya seemed to know that Daniel had spoken with the elder. She looked at him carefully, waiting for him to speak. Daniel took a deep breath. "I talked with the elder today," he said gently. Maya nodded. Her eyes were calm but full of emotion.
"He told me about your traditions," Daniel continued.
"About what this situation might mean to your people." Maya looked down at her hands. For a long moment, she did not speak. Then she said softly, "I did not want to confuse you. I hoped you would understand in time." Daniel felt a mix of emotions. "I never meant to take part in something I didn't understand," he said. "But I also never meant to hurt you or your family." Maya looked up at him. "You did not hurt us," she said. "You helped me when I needed help. That is why my family respects you." There was a long silence between them. The air felt heavy with unspoken feelings. Daniel realized that this was no longer just about helping a stranger. It was about two worlds meeting in a way that neither had fully planned. Maya finally spoke again. She explained that she had agreed to follow this tradition because she believed Daniel was a kind and honest man. She said she did not want to force him into anything. She wanted him to choose freely, with understanding. Daniel felt a deep respect for her honesty. He could see that this was not a game or a trick. It was a serious cultural matter mixed with real human feelings. "I need time," Daniel said truthfully. "I need to understand what I feel and what I can truly promise." Maya nodded. "That is fair," she said quietly. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He walked outside and looked at the stars. The sky was wide and full of light. He thought about how his life had been simple before. Now it felt like he was standing at a crossroads. He thought about responsibility, about kindness, and about how sometimes helping someone can lead to much bigger changes than expected. He did not yet know what choice he would make, but he knew one thing for sure. This moment would shape not only his life, but Maya's as well, and whatever came next would require honesty, respect, and courage. The morning light came softly through the windows, but Daniel had barely slept. His mind had stayed busy all night, thinking about everything the elder had said and everything Maya had shared. When he finally got out of bed, he felt tired but also strangely clear. He knew he could not avoid making a decision forever. Something important was waiting, and he had to face it honestly. Maya was already awake, sitting quietly near the window. She looked calm, but Daniel could tell that she, too, had been thinking deeply. They shared a quiet greeting. There was no rush to speak. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, but it was heavy with meaning. Daniel made breakfast, moving slowly, letting his thoughts settle. As they ate, he finally spoke. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, "about what this means for you, for me, and for both of our lives." Maya listened closely, her hands resting calmly on the table. "I never planned for something like this," Daniel continued, "but I also can't pretend that nothing has changed. You are not just a guest anymore. You are someone I care about." Maya looked down, then back up. Her eyes showed both hope and caution. Daniel went on, "I don't want to make a promise I can't keep, but I also don't want to turn my back on you or on what we've shared here. I want to move forward in a way that is honest and respectful to both of us." Maya took a slow breath. "That is all I ever wanted," she said softly. "For you to choose with your heart, not because of pressure. Over the next few days, Daniel and Maya talked more openly than before. They shared more about their pasts, their hopes, and their fears. Daniel talked about how he had lost close connections over the years and how living alone had slowly become his normal. Maya talked about her community, her strong ties to family, and how tradition had always guided her life. Daniel began to understand that for Maya, tradition was not just a rule. It was a way of showing respect, love, and responsibility. It was how her people stayed connected across generations. At the same time, Maya began to understand Daniel's world, where people often lived more independently and made big life choices alone. One afternoon, the elder returned, this time with another family member. They sat together outside. The conversation was calm and respectful. The elder explained that there was no anger or shame if Daniel chose not to continue in this traditional path. What mattered most was honesty and mutual respect. This helped Daniel feel some of the pressure lift. He realized that he was not being trapped. He was being given a choice, a real choice with real consequences for real people. That night, Daniel and Maya sat together again. The sky was clear and the stars were bright. Daniel spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. "I can't pretend to fully understand everything yet," he said, "but I do know that you matter to me. I don't want you to feel unwanted or unsafe. If you are willing, I would like to continue building something together, step by step, with respect for your traditions and for my own understanding." Maya's eyes filled with quiet emotion. She did not rush to speak. When she finally did, her voice was steady but full of feeling. "That means more to me than you know," she said. "I do not need perfection. I only need honesty and care." From that moment, their relationship changed. It was no longer just about helping and being helped. It became about shared responsibility and growing trust. They did not rush into anything. They took time to learn about each other's worlds. Daniel learned more about her traditions. Maya learned more about his way of life. People from Maya's community visited from time to time. Each visit was respectful and calm. Daniel was treated with growing trust. He could feel that he was slowly being accepted, not because of words, but because of how he acted. At the same time, Daniel felt his own life changing in ways he had not expected. His house felt warmer. The silence felt different. It was no longer empty. It was peaceful in a new way, filled with shared moments, small talks, and quiet understanding. Daniel also took steps to make sure everything was healthy and balanced. He encouraged Maya to get medical care for her leg, and this time, she agreed. Together, they went to town. The visit helped Daniel feel more confident that he was doing the right thing, not just culturally, but practically and responsibly. As time passed, Maya's leg healed well. With her strength returning, she became more active. She helped in the house, in the garden, and in small daily tasks. But now, it felt different. It was not just duty, it was partnership. Daniel sometimes thought back to that lonely road where he had first seen her sitting by the side. It amazed him how one small decision had led to such a big change. He realized that life often works in unexpected ways. A simple choice to help can open doors to new paths, new responsibilities, and new kinds of love and connection. Maya, too, reflected on how her life had changed. She had stepped into a world that was different from her own, but she had done so with courage. She felt respected and heard. That mattered deeply to her. In time, Daniel and Maya found a rhythm that worked for both of them. They did not pretend that everything was easy. There were moments of confusion and learning, but there was also patience, laughter, and quiet support. Daniel no longer felt like a man standing alone in the desert. He felt connected, not just to Maya, but to a wider story of culture, tradition, and shared humanity. He learned that kindness is not always simple. Sometimes it carries deep meaning in ways we do not expect. Looking back, Daniel understood that bringing Maya into his home had not just changed her life, it had changed his, too. He had learned that true connection is built not on fear or misunderstanding, but on respect, honesty, and the willingness to grow together. In the end, what started as a kind act on a lonely road became the beginning of a new chapter for both of them. A chapter filled with learning, shared strength, and a quiet promise to walk forward together, step by step, into a future neither of them had planned, but both were now ready to face.